Hi everyone, I am making my video about the new Supreme Court nominee, Neil Gorsuch. I've heard it pronounced a lot of different ways, but that's the way it's spelled, so that's Gorsuch. That's how I'm going to say it. I have a lot of notes, and so I'm going to be kind of looking over to my computer in order to keep myself on track. I've been asked a couple of times what my opinion is on this particular Supreme Court nominee. And as of right now, I am actually thrilled. Not thrilled because I agree with him, and not thrilled because it's going to be a conservative nominee, because that's not what I am, that's not what I stand for. What I'm thrilled about is that it's the best possible outcome in the worst possible situation. I was worried about hearing of a nominee that was exactly like the rest of the cabinet, like DeVos, like Bannon. But we lucked out. The Supreme Court justice that will have, he's 49 years old, so he's going to be in office he could be in office for 30 years, maybe even 40 years. That's a lifetime appointment. We need to have someone that is open to free thinking. We need to have someone who's educated, and we need to have someone who is not ultra conservative. For those saying that this nominee is ultra conservative, I'm not going to argue with you, but I am going to say that a conservative justice from Texas or Virginia is not the same as a conservative justice born and raised in Denver, Colorado. Just saying. Mr. Justice Gorsuch was educated at a Jesuit high school in Colorado, and he, after high school, pursued a very robust education in law, and it also included a PhD in philosophy at Oxford University. When I simply, was doing some research and heard about his education alone, that gave me a lot more optimism. Typically, people that pursue higher education tend to be more liberal, even coming from a very conservative background or a very religious background. And so the Jesuit high school education doesn't really make that much of a difference when you have Ivy League universities teaching somebody in their adult mind. So I figure his conservatism is well rooted, and it's probably extremely well thought, considering his degree in philosophy. When you learn philosophy, you very rarely stick with a very rigid mindset. You usually open your mind a little bit, and there you go. His mother headed the EPA under Reagan, which also concretes the fact that he was probably raised extremely conservatively. During the Reagan era, for a woman to be in government at all was almost a new story. And for her to head the EPA, the very first female to head that type of government agency, that's amazing. That's quite progressive, and in an extremely hyper-conservative world like the Reagan years were. Having a woman head that sort of agency is a big deal. I've read conflicting reports about what she did and what she stood for and that sort of thing, but details aside, the fact that she was in that position is very impressive to me. Some other worries that I've heard expressed in the media and also from people regarding this particular Supreme Court nominee is, specific court cases, the Hobby Lobby case. And that whole thing, if you're not familiar with it, it's basically Hobby Lobby sued, I believe it was the state of Colorado, the ACA was requiring that insurance companies cover things like contraceptives, birth control. Well, Hobby Lobby is a very, very religious organization, and they claimed that it was their religious freedom to not offer services that directly, pay for insurance that would offer services that directly contradict with their religious freedoms. Well, this case, it won, essentially, and that created a huge issue with the ACA because the federal mandate on insurance is to have certain criteria that they cover. Contraceptive care was part of it. And so that was one of the very first cases to actually start to challenge the Affordable Care Act. Of course, this conservative religious justice was going to rule in favor of a conservative religious ideal. That makes perfect sense. That's not something that I necessarily fault the man for as a justice, as a conservative justice. However, the Hobby Lobby case, to sort of bring it into perspective, if you think about, say another medical procedure or another pretty much routine medication, say like my thyroid medication, levothyroxine. Say my employer was paying for a portion of my insurance and said, you know what, it's my religious freedom to say that your thyroid can't work. I don't believe in this medication stuff, so I'm not going to offer drug coverage because it goes against my religious freedoms. That sounds pretty ridiculous, right? Well, to line item insurance is ridiculous. To say something that an insurance company would ordinarily cover, they can't because of something that you believe, you're going to impose those beliefs on people that work for you. I'm sorry, but that is just ridiculous. I'm of the mindset that you should probably just keep your religion off of my body and keep your religion out of my insurance policy and keep your religion out of my pocketbook, because it has nothing to do with you, what I do with my body. And for an employer to pay for a portion of insurance doesn't mean they're paying for your birth control. It doesn't mean they're condoning your birth control. What it means is they're condoning you having health care, and your choices in your health care are yours alone. So that's my little rant on that. I'm sure that most liberals feel that way, and I'm sure that actually most sane Americans feel that way. There are not that many people that are so far right that don't believe that healthcare belong, and the decisions you make for your own body believe, that your personal decisions belong to somebody else. I feel like the media blows that out of proportion. And overall, most sane Americans can agree with that. So that's not something that I'm really worried about with this justice. I don't believe that he's going to overturn Roe v. Wade. I don't believe, I do, however, believe that if we lose another liberal Supreme Court justice and all we're left with is a extremely conservative Supreme Court, we might lose groundbreaking landmark cases like that. So that's just why we have to stay vigilant, and we have to keep our Congress in line, and we have to flip our government back to being representative of all people, not just the conservative side of the country. One justice isn't going to make the difference there, at least not at this point in time. Maybe in the future, if we lose another liberal justice like Ruth Ginsburg, who is very, very elderly. So that is something that people are very concerned about as well, is, if we continue to have all of these nominees to the Supreme Court by our conservative presidents, what are we going to do when we lose, sight for a lifetime appointment of the liberal ideology of this country as well? Well, that's where we really have to hold Congress accountable, and they have to filibuster. They have to ensure that, possibly term limits get put on these lifetime positions, because the world changes too quickly now to have lifetime positions in a democracy. I think it just doesn't seem to make sense to me. Again, I'll come back to something that I mentioned earlier. A conservative justice from Denver, Colorado is very, very different than a conservative justice from Virginia or from one of the Carolinas or from Texas. I would be more worried and I would be more upset about the way things went and about how Obama's nominee was put out to wash for the last year, only for Trump to get his hands dirty in the Supreme Court immediately upon taking office, even with all of the controversy. I'd be a lot more upset if he would have chosen somebody as incredibly right-wing as Bannon or as DeVos or as many of his other appointees to different positions. So to tie this up, my opinion on the Supreme Court Justice, Neil Gorsuch, appoint him. Well, he's been appointed, confirm him, and get it over with so that he can start overseeing cases in April. Because right now we're deadlocked and we have to have that fail safe. It's just a part of our democracy. The legislative branch and the executive branch are the two lawmaking entities of our government. And the Supreme Court and the judicial branch is about upholding those laws and making sure that those laws are in fact constitutional. Legislating from the bench does not happen very often, and with this particular justice, because of how conservative he is and his background and his education, I don't foresee him doing that. So I could be wrong. I could be kicking myself later, but for now, take a deep breath. We're gonna be okay, and just keep vigilant, keep paying attention, and stay educated. Keep an eye on the government, because in the end, none of those people have power. We do, the people. And it's up to us to maintain that power. If we lose it, it's our own fault. That's how democracies die. And America's too strong for that. Our people are too educated, and our people are too fiery for that to happen. So I have faith that this is just another blip in the radar, and sanity will soon return. Thank you very much, and have a wonderful evening.